the new player experience. When I started playing Stellaris, I was mostly fumbling about with friends, clicking buttons and moving ships just for the sake of it without any deeper thought. I have to preface that learning any Paradox game is hard, even more so for a game as complex as Stellaris. More than a dozen resources and a complete set of menus, and if you press the wrong one, you might just die. If you've played Stellaris, oh no, wait, every Paradox game ever, their tutorials are terrible. They explain absolutely nothing about the actual game mechanics that actually matter. If anything, they just vaguely tell you what each button does without any more detail. Your only option is to open up YouTube and subscribe to a channel like this one. I'm not joking, that's actually what I did and recommend you to do, because at least with this, you won't be stumbling about at every roadblock for hundreds of hours straight, because that's roughly the amount of time needed just to understand the very basics of the game. Oh, let's not forget about the DLCs. Some make the game harder, while others allow you to roleplay Star Wars. Now, in classic Paradox fashion, the good story building events are paywalled behind DLCs. Stellaris as a game is very much designed as a story builder, giving the player tools to create their own narratives. For example, you can either be a peaceful trader or a warmongering despot. Either way, you're still gonna die to the crisis. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. There's so many ways to play, and with countless overhaul mods, this game can be played for thousands of hours and still feel fresh. Although that doesn't make it perfect. There are countless issues regarding balance and game-changing overhauls. Now, let's talk about the issues of the game and why it's terrible for new players. The learning experience. To say that Paradox games have a steep learning curve would be an understatement. They really embody the easy to learn and hard to master mentality down to its core. Sure, you can learn the basics after 100 hours or so, but that's if you're playing one of the easiest difficulties and not neighboring some particularly unsavory characters. Because let's be real here, most of the Stellaris player population only does single player and only play for the sake of playing. And that's fine, but the issues of the game lies beyond just that. With plethora of choices come infinite possibilities. What people don't seem to think about is that if you're not new, you have no idea how crippling it is to be overwhelmed by the amount of information every menu has. Veterans like you or I have memorized every nook and cranny of the game, but what if they don't have this? This makes the player extremely confused in most cases on what to do, as each time they have to make a decision, they see some vague sounding modifier that may or may not help them in reaching their goals. Oh, and by the way, there is basically no interesting victory conditions in Stellaris. Have the most score by X year or eliminate everyone else before then. The latter being very boring and the former being very tedious. Heck, some of the players I played with never actually seen the victory screen, even those with thousands of hours of playtime. So effectively, there is none for a new player. This can have the issue of crippling the player with infinite choices and no objectives. Let's not forget about the absolutely atrocious lag that comes with this as well. Nobody wants to experience having multiple seconds per day when you can just restart the game instead. And what I mean by that is making a new save, because most of the interesting gameplay and interactions where people can learn are very limited. So in reality, you have to make up your own objectives and goals. This approach has its upsides in giving the player a true sandbox experience, you could say, but there isn't much of anything to do after you get past the mid-game. If you like this, then that's fine, but at some point, this can become quite hollow. At the very least, in HOI or EU4, you can look at our own history to get inspiration on how to play and learn. In this game, you only have your imagination to work with. And then there's the power creep. Stellaris is an always changing game. Look at the pictures compared to when it was released and now. It's practically a different game. Many mechanics were overhauled, which made especially older events that were developed and balanced years ago to break. The Great Khan is a great example. They used to be extremely terrifying when alloy production was so much lower. Now, the AI just tramples over them like they weren't even there. Before orbital rings and industrial districts, the only way to get advanced jobs were from building slots, which required pubs, which also take ages to grow, limiting any expansion of alloys and tech to an absolute minimum. Unlike now, where you just pay a lump sum of minerals and gain both Another example being research stations. Back when each scientist pop produced 4 times less science, they were great. Now they're absolutely terrible. Truly an ancient design that was never updated, as they still cost, upkeep, and produce the same as 5 years ago. Now let's talk about the recent leader rework. Oh boy. Every change they added had something broken or an exploit attached to them. Ship discounts? Nerfed. Empire size reduction? Gone. Leader production? Nerfed. Oh wait, it's still there. Basically, they had to revert or change almost everything about the update with multiple balance patches. If this isn't confusing for a new player, then I don't know what is. This originates from the need to make the new DLCs and features appealing for long-time players that basically have exhausted every nook and cranny of the game's content. If the DLCs are weak, nobody would ever want to pay and play them. If they're too strong, you can just rebalance it later when people already bought the DLCs. Look, I'm not saying that they always make broken and unbalanced DLCs, but what I am saying is they succeeded in making Paragons permanently banned in multiplayer. I can go on and on about the balance, but how about the mods? I swear to God, every bad feature Paradox made can be fixed by just looking up some dude's mod, aka frustration project. Like the performance mods, for example. Late game is literally unplayable without them, especially if you're running on a potato. I myself have a GigaChat laptop and I can hear the screams of agony this thing makes when I go past the mid game. Let's also not forget about the terrible UI design. Why is the outliner so chunky? By the mid game, you'll find yourself frantically scrolling up and down for no reason when you can just use these 2 mods to save yourself from all that hassle. Honestly, if you're a new player, I highly recommend you do this. Conquering these many planets with the vanilla UI is truly one awful experience. Then just use planetary automation. No, don't. It sucks and may straight up kill you. What if you're on console? Well, sucks to be you. The console version is behind by a couple of years and also don't have access to any mods. So you're stuck with bad performance, bad UI, and no extra content but the DLCs. Oh right, have I mentioned the gazillion DLCs? Hot take, they're basically just mods but costing real money. Yeah, I said it. Paradox have a history of releasing unfinished games and building it up to something great later on using, you guessed it, DLCs. And there's usually a lot of them with a hefty price tag too. Aside from Imperator Rome, even these less than stellar business practices have their own upsides in the form of free updates years down the line. Usually, game developers slow down updates after the initial hype from release dies down, mostly because after selling the main game, there's not really much profit to be made. If they're brave, maybe 1 or 2 DLCs, and then quiet down. Not Paradox! They spam out DLCs like nobody's business. Of course, while changing a lot of things. People hate this, and I can see why. Imagine an update overhauling your favorite game entirely, while forcing you to pay $20 to get all the new features. And to top it all off, imagine this happening again and again and again. Yeah, I would be pissed. Hundreds of hours learning the game down the drain. And for what? I mean, just look at the DLC store pages. They're all review bombed to hell and back. Every single one of them. Terrible balance, game-breaking bugs, or just changing every single thing again and again, and of course, again. Oh, would you look at that? I finished my stores, bingo! Then, why do people still play in the first place? Because even after everything, the constant free updates keep improving the game well past their initial release date. Highly preferable, as the alternative would be a very slow and painful death. The progression was streamlined for less jank, clearer UI that won't make your eyes bleed, and constant performance improvements make it all so much more enjoyable compared to 7 years ago. I completely understand that the issues of the game, especially DLCs, come from the upper echelons that force the devs to rush things and fix later. They're very passionate about the game, but can't say nor do anything as it may jeopardize their livelihoods. I'm actually rather impressed they made things this enjoyable even after all the issues outlined before. The player count's healthy, and pretty much everyone complaining about the DLCs already went through the 5 stages of grief, so it's not that much of an issue. I also have to preface my bias towards multiplayer. Most of my playtime is on there, so I had to hold myself back from complaining about the atrocious desync issues because I did that already. There is just something special about playing against real players, and I wouldn't have it any other way, as that is truly the new player experience. And no, I am not a masochist, I swear. Thank you to Kenji, Alaya West, and the others for the generous support. If you like what I do, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It helps a lot, and you can join an exclusive Discord server and sometimes get extra scenes. See you all soon.